Okay. First of all, my name's Fuentes. I believe I know most of you, and if not, hello and great to meet you. Tom Ross is also our co-host. Tom's a great guy that we've met. How long have we known each other now, Tom?
Probably 2 or 3 years, I think, somewhere in there.
And all of our interactions have been via happy hour or through probably a North and Co event of some kind. And they've been with everything else and all the other people, they've been maybe 2, 3, 5 minutes long. But we go deep and we get quick and we go to some super high levels. The last one was in the parking lot about 2 weeks ago when I did an event. And we just talked about collaborating together because what I know about Tom is how big his mind is, how super intellectual, and also at the same time, while he's humanly intellectual, he's also got a really cool connection to this bigger consciousness. And so typically those are our conversations.
Hey, what are you doing with my phone?
And so then we talked the other day, and we decided to just do a quick pop-up event, talk about positivity, realism. Tom, share a little bit more about yourself, mortgage industry, things like that.
Yeah, so I've been 20, coming up on 22-year veteran in the mortgage industry for a little while. I've gone through a wide spectrum of that process. Like what you said, when we get together, we immediately start talking about bigger picture, human type of that aspect, and being able to get control of my mind and really quiet my mind has created an unbelievable amount of peace in my business. I enjoy life a little bit more. So when Al and I get together, we talk. We usually kind of get into. Sometimes it'll be a little esoteric. Many times it's also very highly pragmatic. And last time we got together, when we were on the phone yesterday, we were talking about what we're seeing out there in the market right now. There's obviously a great deal of uncertainty going on a human level, and we were starting to riff about ways that maybe the most effective ways that people can that people can really process what's going on to be able to be in greater states of peace or ease or flow and remain positive in situations of uncertainty, because it's different. It looks different. The strategies are slightly different by necessity than when things are very certain. So, but yeah, I appreciate you having me on, Al. Honestly, this is the first one. This is the first time I've done something like this as well. So it's pretty interesting, pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a few main things too I've noticed with that, and based on our talk yesterday, there's a lot of question. There's so much data and so much information out there, and the biggest challenge is, what do we attach to? What information do we attach to? What do we believe? What do we not believe? That can spin us out. What is real positivity versus fake positivity? And that can spin us out, because to me, there's only one difference between real positivity and fake positivity. Real positivity is something that you're speaking and you're feeling the same thing you're intellectually speaking, like, oh, I'm really good. And if you're feeling like really crappy, that's fake positivity. And it's not a negative fake positivity. It's just not 100% in truth positivity. And so whatever it is you're speaking, it has to align both in mind and in body and in frequency or vibration. And that's one thing. But the challenge with that is, where does that come from? And another thing with positivity is what Tom was just saying, is that in this environment, the routines are gone. The people we get to connect with on a daily basis it's not the same. The gym we go to is closed. The restaurants, whatever it is, there's so many changes right now that
I was listening to something.
There's no attachment to the real connection of what we believe positivity is. It's all different. And so we've got to look now and scan our lives, and everyone's searching right now to identify positivity, to identify sanity, to identify centeredness. And that's all a part of this whole construct. Because if you're not centered, you're probably not going to be positive. And if you're not sane, you're probably going to be drunk. And if you're drunk, who knows what that really means. But you're seeing a lot of that, right, Tom? As far as, and that's what we talked about, this people lost in what's positive, what's not. And tell me more about that. When we talked yesterday, you brought that up a little bit.
Yeah, so there's it's an interesting thing that's happening right now. We're in the middle of a set of circumstances that are evolving with extreme rapidity. And what you said earlier a minute ago is people naturally, as a human being, I naturally look to find like where are my, what is stable and what is, and what is static. And right now, the conditions change so fast with what's going on. It's really difficult to have to be able to get that information. I think that one thing, and Brian, we were on a great call earlier in the day, and he referenced the book that he referenced a few days ago, is Eckhart Tolle book that he's of stability and called The Power of Now. There's at a big level, you can understand that, like, right now,
I want you to pay attention now.
so if you can look at that, like right now, there's literally nothing that's wrong in this moment. You breathe in, you breathe out. There's no imminent threat. It's okay to be uncertain, and I think that it's super important to at a base level, if you're going to be positive, and that positivity has to come from authenticity, you have to scale back and at least and be able to know at a fundamental level that it's okay to be uncertain. Uncertainty is, there's nothing wrong with it. We're living in a set of probabilities, at all times. And if I choose to blindly say that it's going to be this one particular way, and let's call this one particular way, that everything is going to be perfect in 3 weeks, we're all back in the groove and there's nothing going on, then I'm probably doing myself a slight disservice by not preparing for other probabilities. Acknowledging probabilities and acknowledging that there are multiple different ways something can go is not naysaying. And I think that there's been a real desire to ignore what might be that's negative in favor of this habit that so many people have gotten into of, I only focus on what I want. That works very, very well in situations where what you want is always really great, and the circumstances are always going to be very even for you. So if I don't get what I want, I'm still in a stable environment. But if I'm in an environment that is chaotic, and I'm only focusing on one particular potential outcome, and now the probability of that outcome coming in is less, and the probability of a highly undesirable outcome objectively is greater, then I haven't prepared myself. So it's safe to be able to focus on only the good stuff in times of great stability. It's practical and it's pragmatic to be able to focus in on multiple probabilities in times where things are a little less stable. And I think that's something important to talk about. And I don't think it's been talked about enough recently as we've been going through this the last 2 weeks.
Right. And we'll break that down, actually. Let's start with uncertainty. You spoke to, it's okay to feel uncertainty. Really, there's two constructs that our brain operates in. The human construct, that's based on a series of events in our own life from our own history. And that's an inner human consciousness. And then there's the collective human consciousness. And that human construct that is made from those two parts, that is everything that's fear, doubt, worry, uncertainty, disempowerment. All of these frameworks exist in that human construct, either inside of you or outside of you. And it could be, you're afraid because the last time something big happened, big event, you lost your house. And so that can stir some things up in you. Or you see somebody down the street lose their house, and then that stirs something out. The collective human consciousness and your own human consciousness exists. There's many of those variables exist. And uncertainty is one of those things. Then you talked about, and it's okay to address our humanness. Humanness is not going anywhere. Humanness is going to be there no matter how high we get in vibration, no matter how connected, no matter how much trust, truth. We can live in every day variables of humanness that affect us, period. And we have to continue to look at it, decide how much value and importance it has, and then do something with it. So with uncertainty, it's really meant, or fear, or doubt, or worry, they're all meant to be friends. They're not something we have to ignore or pretend it's not there or be afraid of. They're meant to remind us, okay, well, where do we want our focus to be? Yes, there's plenty of things out there, but where do we want our focus? And then when Tom talked about looking at different paths and looking at different opportunities or options, or not just, hey, in 3 weeks, everything's going to be great. We don't know that for sure. So to create some positive, even if you're feeling it and believing 100% inside and out that everything's going to be okay in 3 weeks, that's a really difficult thing to do because we don't have that variable clear. And so there's some part of our brain that's not going to buy into that 100%. And there's some part of our consciousness that is not buying into that. So if you truly feel that, really what you're thinking is, if everything's guaranteed going to be okay in 3 weeks, what you're really saying is, no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay today, tomorrow, 3 weeks from now, a year from now. But if we try to tie that to 3 weeks, some kind of outcome, then we're missing the point. The point is no matter what, I'm going to be okay. But I can't pretend that in 3 weeks, everything's going to be okay based on a variable outside of me, because I can't control that. And so, Tom, when you speak to that, it's the realism is we don't know what's going to happen in 3 weeks, but also the realism is if I look at my entire life, I've always figured it out. So based on that variable, that I can guarantee because I've already proven it. But based on some outcome 3 weeks from now, I can't guarantee that, nor can I guarantee if this path or this path or this path. So Tom, when you speak to looking at the things, if you run down these paths and you run fear down, well, what if this happens? What if the entire market shuts down? What if the federal government, puts a nationwide restriction and then everything truly shuts down? Well, what if a lot of things? But if you look at these paths with emotions versus logic and just possibilities, then that's where the misstep is. And I think that's where people get confused on positivity and realism. So if I have a series of events, and let's say I do coaching, which I do, and I go, okay, what's one of the possibilities? One of the possibilities is the economy really breaks. People start doing the luxury things like coaching, and I don't have an income in the way I know it. Okay, now if I run that with fear, doubt, and worry, that's going to be stress me out, and then I'm going to just freak out. But if I say, okay, that's a real possibility, how do I want, one, what's important for me to do now, but two, how do I want to have truth in that? Well, I'll always figure it out. That's the first thing. I don't know what it looks like, but if I did, what actions could I take? What things could I do? The positive piece is positively thinking how you could address that outcome. The real piece is realizing that it's possible. And for us to ignore that, I may not have clients in another month, is ridiculous because it's possible. But for me to get afraid about it, that's also ridiculous because I've always figured it out. So I'm going to look at what possibilities through positivity that this real thing can be. And that's how I'm going to work. Does that make sense, Tom?
Yeah, and I think that there's a process that you just described that I go through, and I'll contextualize it in a slightly different way. Maybe it's something that'll can land for somebody. But in my practice, my mentors, Matthew Ferry, we talk about making peace with the worst case scenario, right? And so if I lose all of if my company shut down, I don't think it will, but if my company shut down, if my industry shut down, and if I was left with, with nothing, what then? Okay, well, I wouldn't have a job. Okay, well, what would happen if I didn't have a job? What would happen if I couldn't pay my mortgage? I take the steps all the way down to baseline, which is like, oh, well, I'd probably just go find work somewhere. We'd be fine. We'd hold up with my parents. We'd do it. I mean, whatever it is, you can you can reduce it down to a baseline level, and then you can go, oh, well, yeah, I figured something out. Like you said, I always figure something out. And so if I make peace with the worst case scenario, my survival mind is trying to solve for a set of probabilities, which has one purpose, and that is to keep me alive. Everything that I am feeling and I'm experiencing from a survival mind perspective is trying to somehow avoid a negative future. And if so, I look dead up at a worst case possible scenario negative future, that immediately diffuse that survival mind. Then all of a sudden I become more flexible. I have more options when I look at things in a more realistic level. Very unlikely that outcome happens. What is more likely? Well, it's more likely that we see a little bit of a shock. Okay, what could that mean for my realtor clients? Okay, what could that mean for my potential clients? But making peace with the worst case scenario gives an extreme amount of power with when you're looking at things as they are likely to be, because you're no longer trying to avoid what you really don't want. You've already reconciled with it.
Yeah, when the worst case scenario becomes clear and you realize you can survive it, then that survival mentality reduces or even can get removed for the most part, maybe 10-15% still there. Once you get the survival part removed, then you can look at the situation and figure out how you want to thrive. And that's exactly what you're saying, Tom, right?
Yeah, 100%. From that position, you can look at, and again, right now at this point in the market, there's so much information flying so quickly, it's hard to know what the landscape was. The other day I've used the analogy a couple of different times. We're at the start of a hurricane, moving over an island. Everybody's kind of like hunkered down in the house here at the moment. We haven't been able to go outside yet to see really what what the damages are, where the opportunities are going to be present because of what's happened. What we're doing is we're talking to our friends in their different houses, literally. Hey, what are you feeling? Hey, what are you feeling? We're gathering information in bits and pieces, but we haven't really been able to assess because we're at the start of this thing that's kind of moving through. But even in that process right now, what's possible is to recontextualize the events that I'm experiencing. And I say recontextualize, some people may refer to it as reframing. Recontextualize the objective events and language it in a way that actually empowers me. So, for example, right now, most of the world is experiencing an extraordinary slowdown in the course of normal life. That slowdown actually gives me the opportunity, doesn't give me, however, anybody in that position, gives them the opportunity to reconsider everything that they have going on, how their life is run, how their schedule is run, how, the way they interact with their families, the way they interact, with their coworkers, the job they do. Everything becomes potentially up for consideration in this particular time where you're almost, kind of forced to sit at home. I was talking to a friend, Alex, the other day, who was really using this, and he's in real estate, and was really using this as a way to go, wow, I let my schedule get completely out of control. I'm going to restructure my business where I'm going 9 to 3, period, end of story, and I can do as much business as I want to do in that point in time, and I really enjoy my family. So his reality right now may be a great deal of uncertainty in all these other little areas where he doesn't know exactly what the strategies are going to be to employ. But what he's doing right now is he's completely recontextualizing his relationship with being on lockdown. And he's developed an empowering way to restructure his business in the future. And, again, when you remove the need to deny, which is really just a survival mechanism of what is actually going on, and you get really present with what is, then you have the opportunity to start that reframing, that recontextualization process as well, which is extremely positive.
Yeah, let's break that down a little bit, Tom, to really elaborate on what you said. Essentially, this moment is such a big event that it's kind of shook people into okay, now I have to reframe. Now I have to reset. But ideally, this becomes a way of life for you every day assessing, okay, what is today and how can I show up and how do I dress today? Not just assuming that you have momentum, not just assuming that, oh, you're going to have clients. How do I show up today to create today? And how do I show up today to impact my day today, not just let it be on cruise control and just do what I'm doing. So many people in life have just been on cruise, and this event has completely woken them up to go, wait a minute, like I can't just be on cruise. It literally isn't possible right now because of the landscape. But ideally, what Tom said is something we learn how to do every day, is to reframe every day based on today, not just rest on yesterday's work, or not just let yesterday's work do things for you today, but to show up today specifically. Another piece of that puzzle is to look at what's relevant today and how we respond to what's relevant today. And a great analogy that I'll share is just driving down the road. And if I've been driving the same road for 10 years and all of a sudden they put a stoplight in halfway down the road for no reason, in my opinion, and it's super long, in my opinion, and there's no traffic and there's no need. So just because I don't agree, do I just not stop? No. And there's a couple of main reasons why. One is because if I just keep going, whether the light's red or not, then there's a possibility somebody be coming. Two, there also could be a cop just hanging out, waiting to see if people are going to stop. And for those are two big enough reasons for me. One, my life. Two, my not getting a ticket. For me to just address humanity. That light, because it's on my path, is now relevant to me, and I have to address it, regardless of whether I think the light should be there or not. I have to address it because it's in my path. Now, there could be a lot of things on the side of the road. Maybe before that time, there was a bunch of cones on the side, not set up yet. Maybe there was a bunch of trucks and shovels and whatever else. I don't stop because I think maybe there's going to be construction. And so I probably should stop, count how many shovels, how many cones, try to figure things out. No, it's not actually in my path. There's no detour signs. There's no road closed, and there's nothing in my way. I'm going to keep going. Only when things are relevant to me does it really cause me to react. And it doesn't matter whether I think people are, the light should be there, or in this case, if people are overreacting or not. I can't, when it becomes relevant in my path, I let the emotions go and I just focus on what's relevant. Because the second part of what Tom said is, when you can reevaluate your life every day you look for the opportunities instead of just trying to survive. Because we've already really, if you've done really well to work out the survival piece by going to a worst case scenario, now you go, okay, this is relevant to me today. A new thing came down from the CDC, or a new thing came down from the Arizona government. What's relevant? How do I react? This directly affects me, and what do I do? How can I do it really well? How can I be really empowered? Because that was the other piece of the puzzle, is when you start operating this way, you can become way more empowered. All the noise on the side of the road doesn't affect me. I'm not going to get distracted. Why the light's there doesn't affect me. I'm not going to get distracted. It's how I choose to sit in that car, how I choose to drive, and how I choose to empower myself in that moment. And that's a big part of it, right, Tom?
Yeah, and I think that there's a real subtle thing there when you're with your analogy about, hey, there's a stoplight there. It's part of my experience now. I may not agree or disagree with it. Like, there's nothing wrong with preferences. Everybody has preferences. Al would prefer not to stop at the stoplight. However, the label of bad is different than having the preference. So, in the context of experiencing things which are not preferable, I don't prefer to have a massive economic shock going on right now. I don't prefer to have mortgage interest rates spiking wildly and having people lose their jobs. Those aren't things that I prefer. They're outside of my preferences. I can have preferences that are different. I still don't label what's going on bad. Once I label it bad, I find myself, I'm in opposition to it. Now I'm feeling it. It's simply a reality. It's simply a set of circumstances. And I can accept wholly and completely a set of circumstances. And when I can accept it wholly and completely, what it does when it's not, when it's bad and I'm put into a conflict with it and survival, my vision narrows. When I accept it wholly for a set of circumstances, and this is with whatever I'm accepting, I have peripheral vision. I can see the field. The awareness that I have reveals really what my options are. The more options that I have, the more flexible I am in my, in what I'm able to do. And that ultimately gives me power to have a very positive experience if that's what I'm looking for.
Absolutely. Just the sheer feeling of this is bad and the anger or frustration or irritation that comes with that releases chemicals in the brain, and that narrow scope, that almost that tunnel vision we get, or feeling something in front of us bigger than ourselves being bigger, just the chemical reaction that happens in the brain and in the body completely takes away energy from our focus of what's possible, or our focus on how we can show up bigger or how we can create more out of this situation. And those chemicals released, they'll settle in joints, they settle in organs, they settle in the back of the neck in tension, they settle in things like the stomach with an ulcer. All these chemicals matter. So the minute you start reacting to things as bad versus good, instead of just a moment, and you have to use this moment to decide whether you want to turn left or right or how you want to move forward, that's really all of our lives. And that's where you get into the reality, and then you create positivity within your reality. And that's a big deal. So that acceptance is huge, Tom. Not looking at it as bad or as opposition is huge, because it does give you that bigger vision. So you want to take some questions? Was there, I know we could talk forever, but look, do you want to take some questions and see if
100%. Anybody who's got anything, unmute yourself and jump in.
Anyone? I know there's some questions out there.
Question, but you guys just hit something right on the head for me, and it was like a huge aha moment. Using the word bad, I can't tell you how often I've said in conversations with people, this is bad, this is really bad. If we just change that verbiage to this is a circumstance, and Al, you added to it by saying what chemically your body does. Thank you. If that's the one thing I got out of today, I really, really appreciate it.
Well, Kathy, and there's one other thing there also. Like when you feel the impulse that something is negative or something is bad, like it's okay to feel like the impulse is going to come. So the defense mechanism of not labeling it like that isn't to try to make wrong, what the initial experience is. But you can then let it pass and be like, okay, it's a circumstance. It's not, you don't want to fight yourself also. Al, I'm sure you have a thought on that.
Yeah, that kind of speaks to what we really started about. There's the inner human verse and the outer human verse, or the inner consciousness and the outer human consciousness that's all collective. And that has been fed to us. Talk tracks, phrases, constructs, they've been fed to us. We've created them. And that humanness is okay. There's never going to be a time in my life where I'm going to walk around and act like, oh, everything's butterflies and rainbows. And I think a lot of people are surprised, especially if you hang out with me in person, how I'm just this simple dude. And we all have human reactions. It's not the human reaction that's a problem. It's allowing ourselves to let that be our truth is the challenge. So when you initially say, oh, this is bad, like Tom said, okay, yep, that's my humanness. Now I've identified, I'm creating this human construct, or I'm seeing this in the human way. What's the bigger vision? Well, the bigger vision can be something completely different. Ultimately, you can start to construct how this can be good or how this can really serve you. You can look to your history and you think, remember that time I lost my job? And that was that very thing that made me change industries. And because I changed industries, yeah, I thought that was bad until it wasn't. The only difference between something bad and not is your ability to allow time to create something from it. And that's it. And so if you can accelerate that process by not fighting the humanness, by accepting that your humanness is interpreting this as bad, and allowing the humanness to be there, and then inviting in a bigger construct at the same time the humanness is existing, then you go, okay, that's what the human's feeling. What is my bigger self feeling? And I think a lot of people, that's where the fight can come in, and it doesn't have to. When I was buying my house, I've been kind of just traipsing around the world for 3.5 years, and I haven't had anything to do but just goof around. Actually, I've been working, but I've also been traveling the world. And then I go to buy a house, and my humanness, I'm waking up, I got tightness in the chest, you know, the loan thing. I'm thinking these weird thoughts, and I'm thinking about, you know, weird thought, and I go, oh yeah, that's just my humanness. And it took maybe 10-15% of my space. But the other part of my space, the 85%, was living in my truth, being clear, being understanding, continuing to figure out what choices I needed to make at the bigger perspective. And I just let my humanness do its thing, and I just let it be on the side. And if I gave it power, it would have consumed me. But I didn't. And so I walked around with a little tightness in my chest. I knew the bigger truth, and I just let it work itself out. And of course, every day I addressed it through visualization, through meditation. Every day I addressed it in mindfulness, but I didn't fight it. And if this is one of those events for people, don't fight the humanness, accept it, but then also invite in the bigger construct of your own history, the bigger construct of the teachings, bigger mind. So thank you for that, Kath.
Who else?
Hey guys, super helpful. For me, I think the biggest takeaway here is making peace with the worst case scenario. I hadn't really yet had the opportunity to even really think through what the worst case scenario is. I was trying to protect myself from going into that space, kind of viewing it as negative to even think about what is the worst case scenario, just stay away from it. But I actually think there's, you know, to your point, a lot of power in making peace with it, because it's really not that bad. Once you get down to it, a lot of options. One of the articles that I read was on how this process and going through this has been very similar to grief and the cycles of grief. And for me specifically, before I even read an article on that, I was really, I was identifying with the cycles of grief going through this process. Do you guys have any insights or thoughts on like how you kind of move through the different phases and how you can help kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, expedite getting from some of the earlier stages of like shutting down and kind of feeling like numb to moving towards more of that like actualized place? Do you guys have any, aside from maybe it is meditation or a specific visualization? Wow, that was a tough one. Any thoughts around that?
I'm gonna throw something out real fast, and then Al, if you want to disagree, agree, and add your spot here. Grief is I understand what you're saying with the commonalities around a process of moving through with respect to grief, but the thing with grief it's specific is it's grief over a static event that's done, typically a death of somebody who's a loved one or a loss of some kind that has been true, that's been true and experienced. I don't know what specifically your situation is, but if it's around just this overall event that is an ongoing and evolving process, I would almost try to bring yourself back down to being okay with the uncertainty. You know, because for me, conceptually, if I'm looking at something to grieve, I feel like it has to have been something that was in a fixed position, and this thing that we're in isn't. And so, if I grieve something that then winds up being something completely other than what I thought, I don't know if that's maybe the most effective process. So I do think that if maybe if making peace and grieving a worst case scenario, and then realizing that, oh, I'm not necessarily this whatever's occurring doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to die. I mean, that's the brain. All making peace with the worst case scenario is to put your brain in a position, which is a couple 100,000-year-old mechanism designed to do one thing: keep you alive, and two things: keep you alive and propagate the species. Putting that thing into a place where it's no longer worrying. I think maybe doing that and then being okay with being uncertain might help. That's my perspective. Al, fire away.
Yeah, I think it is partly perspective, but we're talking maybe possibly, depending on the person, two different things. Tom, you're saying it's about shifting perspective from just something static that is a loss to something that is ever evolving and changing, at least as of right now. And maybe somebody is thinking about a very static thing, the loss of and even if it's just a construct, the mind's pretty amazing at what it can do, but the loss of the current existence, the loss of what they used to do, the loss of being able to socialize and go out, and now they don't have that anymore. So there's a couple of things, but it is a redirect, because that loss is, in what you're saying, it's real, but it's not. It's real because you're not able to go out and socialize right now, but it's not real because it will come back. But on the bigger level, just loss in general, grief has been a very kind of self-consuming construct, because when we typically grieve, it really comes down to what we're missing, what we're not able to do, who we're not able to talk to, what we're not able to experience anymore. And it still goes back to perspective, Lindsay, because anytime there is a loss, anytime something ends, something begins. And when you're in meditation, or when you think about the endings, you can celebrate the fact that you had it in the first place. This is what really accelerates grief. So this partly answers the question on a different level. To accelerate grief, you have to look at what you had that you believe that you lost, and instead of thinking about the end of it, think about what it gave you. That's a huge thing that can help with grief. Think about the gifts that came from it, because you would have never had it at all to lose. So the fact that we lose things like cells in our body means that we had cells in the first place. The fact that we lose a loved one, as unfortunate as it means that we had one in the first place. So we focus more on what's not there versus on what was there. And with grief, that's how you can really accelerate through the stages of grief, is really feed what was there, celebrate it. And then the second stage to that would be then, okay, now that this has ended, what can begin? What can begin? What can I do differently? What can I do? So now we fill ourselves with celebration of what was, and we then take what ended and make new from it, or see the new in it. And those are two big things that when I'm working with clients on grief, that's what we navigate. And then to add Tom's perspective is, in this case specifically, make sure that you're not looking how much is really a loss and how much is still moving and isn't necessarily a loss, even if it feels like it right now. How much is it maybe just on pause? And that can also help, because that's really what Tom's saying, is shift your perspective. Things are moving still. We don't have clarity on what truly is a loss yet. So think about that and move that needle that way. Does that help, Lindsay?
Yeah, it does. And I think the way that I was relating it to loss per se was the lack of or the new feeling of lack of security, and losing what I've always personally had as feeling pretty secure financially and just from the world around me. So losing that and having that uncertainty. So getting to a place where now, 2 weeks into this for me, I'm in a much better place with it, but it did feel very much like I was moving through a very fast-paced cycle of grief to get to a point where now I'm seeing the opportunity, and I'm excited about how much I'm going to learn in this period and how much more of a badass agent I'm going to be on the other side of this. So now I'm to that point, but it did feel like very emotional getting through to that point. It happened a lot faster than it would if you know, were say like losing a loved one. But for me, that was a good just kind of analogy of the emotions I went through to get to a point where I'm now looking and seeing the positivity, opportunity, and silver lining. So anyways, appreciate the help, guys.
Sure.
So that's awesome. So you're specifically reframing and recontextualizing, you know, the circumstances and deciding how this actually works for you. That is the 1000%. That's the game in this entire thing we're going through right now. That's awesome.
Yeah, and security itself is a big illusion. I mean,
Fair.
Because we have security in our routine, we have security or comfort in our business and our job. We put so much weight on the paycheck or the business. We put so much weight in security in these things outside of us, including our ability to work out, because that's what keeps us healthy. I feel really good and really healthy and really secure because I know I get my gym workout in every day. I feel really secure because I know that I get to go to work every day and make a paycheck. These are illusions of security because those aren't guarantees, because you can't control. This is proof of it. What we're going through right now, you can't control that part of it. The real security comes again from the inside out, and we talked a little bit about it already. But thinking about yourself as the currency, and that's where I get my security, is just being the currency of my own life. And I know, Lindsay, there's probably 10 ways you are the currency of your own life. And for anyone who's listening, who's out there, who starts thinking about where real security is, it's not in, I have this much money in the bank and now I can retire and now I feel secure. Okay, or once I get to this number, or because I have this steady job, I feel secure. Because all that, even if you have $1 million in the bank, you know, the dollar can be devalued. It can go to nothing. With the economy, the money, even at that construct, the actual $1 million won't be worth that depending on the economy. So we can't control those things, but we can control just this inner. I always figure it out, and I know I go back to this so simply, but if you really keep coming back to creating a home base in your brain and looking at the history of your own life, how you've been the currency, how your existence creates your life and creates the opportunity to be a great employee or a great business owner or a great father or mother or friend or sibling. So this inner currency, this inner way, the existence alone is that. We've created a world where it is bills and work and having these things. But I guarantee you, and you guys are starting to see it, as these things get devalued, like an open house, like a walkthrough, you guys figure out new ways to create the value. You figure out new ways to create the worth. And it's quite ironic right now when you see, if we just talk real estate in general, it is the realtors in their real bodies that are making the difference, not the open doors right now, you know, or the other ones that are out there. So it's a really interesting market in that spec. And if you're not a realtor, it doesn't matter, because you're figuring out ways to be the currency. That's the real security.
Yeah, I love that. That's I've been taking notes. You guys have had some great nuggets. I really appreciate it. The two things I always tell myself in difficult times, like when I'm like, oh man, I don't know how I'm going to do this, is you can see my cat curled up over here. I always say I'm like a cat. I always land on my feet. Or I always say, like, I've survived 100% of my tough days. So when you put it in perspective, like nothing, yeah, I like using yourself as the currency. I think that's awesome. Okay, sorry for the personal self-help session.
No, that helps a lot of people, or it's really great information for a lot of people, I'm sure.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Who else on feedback? Questions?
I have a question. Oh, go for it.
No, go for it, Brian. You're fine.
Quick question was, we've been talking a lot about self, a lot about the individual. Many of us on the call have a significant other, or we have children, or we're leaders of teams, or we're leaders of companies. How do you guys see the messaging of the uncertainty, uncertain times. There's, I hear us talking about, just changing our own personal vocabulary about the way that we deal with something for ourselves, the way that we deal with loss for ourselves, the way that we remind ourselves that we land on our feet, the way that that sort of thing. But, if my own personal outlook, Tom, for example, is that I'm going to go jump off a cliff because it's uncertain and this is the best thing for me, and that, I certainly am not going to go tell my significant other, hey, I just want to let you know, I may not be back when I walk out the front door. That's not going to be good for them. So not saying that's the case, but you get my point. What do we do with any advice you have for how to communicate what it is we're doing with self, or how to be mindful of what we're communicating with self with somebody else?
Tom, go ahead.
So fantastic question. So in the context of team, we still just look at on the team, we still just look at reality, just where things are. And we are forced into looking at reality because we're all living in a place where there's so much uncertainty slammed into us over and over and over again. I mean, the markets and what we've been through as an industry in the last 3 weeks, it's a literal impossibility not to just see it smashed into constantly. And so the good news about that is it really it forces the conversation to either, hey, the ship's burning, everybody get off, or B, no, we're actually going to be okay because here's our shared history where we know we're going to be okay. Here's what we've done in the past. And by the way, look, we're all sitting here, as to your point in prior conversations on the power of now, we're all sitting here living and breathing, and we can examine as a team the probabilities that are occurring, and then plan for contingencies around them, but just know that here and now we're all in this together. And so that we're very honest with respect to the team on that. The family side of it, I can only speak to how I've been handling this entire process, and that is, it's been more of a living and being kind of just an example of this information that I've internalized, for some time. We're living an example that everything is in a state of okayness. There's nothing. We can look at the news and we can talk about all the crazy things that are happening on the news, and then we can juxtapose that with how do you feel, right now. We just had game night. How does that feel? We were just we were just playing in the yard. How does that feel? Wow, we just made an awesome dinner. Mom just killed it again, for us. We just made a pot of sauce. Like, how does that feel? And so, if I'm living this one particular life and giving my family a physical frame of reference to experience life that is juxtaposed from all the chaos that's coming in from whatever sources they're getting, then I can't make their decisions for them on how they want to process and internalize that information. But generally speaking, I find that most people will default to the truth that they're experiencing, and not necessarily spin out on truths that are being thrown at them. So that's all I can say on that is in the context of my team. It's been so fast and so furious. It's necessitated complete transparency, and that's been valuable to us. And we platooned and we're in it together. And then creating that space on the family side. I have no idea if that even approach is answering what you're asking, though, because it was really amazing and deep, and I don't know if I got it. Al?
Yeah. Walking the walk is kind of part of the essence. You can't really be responsible for how other people are going to react, or what they're going to feel, or what they're going to think. But whether it's with your family or with the team, or even a collective company of 200 plus people, walking the walk is the number one thing. How you do your work and be the example is the number one thing you can do for everyone. And that comes with very specific things from the very beginning of this conversation. Being able to look at the potential possibilities without emotion, without scarcity, without fear, and not look at them as this is the truth or the outcome, but these are potential possibilities. I think that's where Tom's talking about transparency. But to have every one of those paths looked at from an empowerment, to have every one of those paths looked at with opportunities, not doomsday mindset, that's going to be a big piece when you're looking at a whole team. Here's the different paths, here's the different potentials. I'm going to challenge you, team, because this is what I'm doing, and here's my ideas of what I think that if we go on this path, this is what I get to do. This is how I get to show up empowered. This is how I get to use it as an opportunity. If it's this path, now I'm going to challenge you to do the same. What is in these paths that I see as a company collective, or for all of us, what are these paths that you see now, and how are you going to use them as opportunities? How are you going to show up in those paths? And walking that walk first, and then actually giving real examples as you look at the different paths and creating opportunity empowerment for them is going to be huge, because that stirs people's minds. And they are going to still be challenged with the humanness, like the oh no and the doomsday mindset. But then they can also look to your examples, real examples, and they can look to how you're walking the walk, and they can start to figure out, well, how do I approach this potential path as an opportunity? What would I do? How can I really get big in this situation? And so it starts to foster that bigger mind and not just the human mind. And then at home with loved ones, and one of the number one things I do is just be able to see them as big as they are, remind them. And this was before all this, by the way. When I talk to parents about their children, the number one gift a parent can give a child is to see them and communicate exactly how they see them. Now, with animals, we do that really well. Oh, you're such a good puppy. You're such a beautiful dog. Oh, I love you so much. You're so strong. It's crazy how we can do that with an animal. But with a kid, we don't do that as much, and all you animal lovers got big smiles on your face. We're like, oh, that's funny. Stacy Voss, I see you, big smile over there. But the point is that the biggest gift we can give anybody, whether it's a loved one, or whether it's a team member, or whether it's a child that just isn't figuring it out yet, is to be able to remind them of how you see them and how beautiful and powerful. And if it's a spouse, you get to talk about stories of how you guys have been through this together and figured it out, or that you saw them do this, and this. But at the end of the day, if we're not walking the walk first, we're not in that headspace. And then if we're not seeing ourselves, we can't get in that headspace. When we start seeing ourselves and who we are, and then we start looking to the world around us and be able to see our children that way and remind them. And when they come crying because they don't get to have the birthday party now because everyone's quarantined, you go, you know what? You're so much bigger than any birthday party. You didn't have one yesterday, and you were playing and you were laughing. It's okay. You are the source of your joy, your happiness. I've seen you create this cool house out of sticks. Remember that? You're that powerful. That's who I see every day. To speak to that way to a child is huge, but to a partner or a wife, a team member, for us to continue to promote that and be able to speak to how we truly see people bigger than they probably see themselves is huge. And if we walk the walk, we can do that. If we see ourselves that way, we can do that. And if we can't, then we're probably not gonna be able to do that or even think about it. Cool. Leah, you started to have a question.
Yes, hello. It's kind of on the heels of that, actually. And it's, I guess, navigating, because this is all unknown and everyone is on their own journey, and there's no right or wrong journey for that. And there's so many waves that as we all get to connect in one way, even more so, seeing all these faces, like I'm seeing people more now than I was prior. In a way, I there are times, that a lot of times, where I'm at a peaceful place, I'm at a simplistic place where I, can breathe through it. And I would be interested to know some skills of how to respectfully allow other people, if they're on the opposite side of the spectrum of where you are, to respectfully allow them to be on their journey, and for you to also be in a place of peace. And you know, again, not like say this is where you have to be, you have to come to where I am, I'm not also going to go where you are. But just, I think that is at least what I've noticed in the past like week and a half, is just kind of coming together, and kind of navigating that I respect you, I honor you, we're all figuring this out. And so just kind of, and being okay with being in a positive place. You know, giving myself permission that like, well, it's okay that I feel okay right now. I don't know how long that's going to last, but I'm okay with being there. Anyways, that's my question. Any tips?
I think with respect to dealing with other people who maybe aren't in your same frame of mind, there's a couple of thoughts. That one is, you know, accept, you know, but don't tolerate. So accepting somebody for exactly who they are, for what their experience is. However, don't tolerate, you know, being degraded by it. So, you know, it depends on who the individual is. If it's someone who is, if it's somebody who I'm working with, who is physically in my presence and being physically disruptive to me on a constant basis, well, I can accept their experience for what they're going through. However, I don't have to tolerate an act of something that is actually physically degrading me. That's usually not what people are talking about with this. What's usually a matter of, as somebody is, you know, I have a hard time accepting them for exactly who they are, because I'm holding them accountable to agreements that they never made. So many times it'll be if I'm agitated because somebody is having their experience, I'm actually creating that negative experience, because what I'm doing is I'm saying they should be like me because I'm right. And when I do that, I'm in conflict with what they are. So acknowledging that nobody signed up for my way of viewing the world, you know, for my self-development, you know, protocol, and for the way I even see and experience the world, you know, is super powerful to releasing and then accepting exactly who they are. And generally speaking, in my experiences, once I stop holding people accountable to agreements they never made, I find it way easier to accept, which then actually bizarrely seems to transform their perspective and actions.
Yeah, you just nailed it exactly. You know, you use much bigger words than I do, Tom, and you always do. I usually have to get the dictionary out after I've talked to you and kind of figure out what you're saying, just because you have that much. You have a huge intellect, and I appreciate it. I learn a new word every day when I talk to you. But yeah, acceptance was the biggest thing. And he nailed it so perfectly when he said, our expectations of how we believe others should be, it's such a righteous thing. And I do it too, by the way. I'm so human this way, where I have such a righteousness in my head. I'm like, well, why are they doing it that way? That's stupid. And when I hear my humanness say that, I'm like, whoa, yo, you need to move to the side, because everyone's going to do things their own way, and it's okay. And who are you to say that in that mindset or that righteousness that everyone should do it the way you expect because your way is the right way? I mean, that's exactly what Tom said. It's such a dead-on response. And then but it is tough, because if there's somebody in your immediate space, there is going to be some level of addressing. And if, let's say it's a spouse, for example, and they're just going crazy, and you're around this amazing group of beautiful people who are optimistic, and the spouse is like doom and gloom, and you're just like, acceptance is still key, but to honor them and for them to honor your environment, and so they can keep it and they want it, I'm gonna let you have that. That's not my story. That's not my truth. And there may either have to be some boundaries made. Like, that's probably not an area we should talk about, because it doesn't really, we aren't on the same. It's okay you're where you're at, and it's okay where I'm at. So let's create a boundary where it's not something that we do. If it's a team member, we got to talk about culture, and we got to talk about, does this person align with us truly? And then that's a whole nother set of conversations, and because now you're in a business and you really do want a collective culture. And ultimately, that addressing, if it's somebody out even farther out than that, well, you just accept them, you send them, and if you want to take any action and this is something else Tom said is you don't want to take that energy on, because that's when you've taken on whatever negative, and you've created the strife almost with the righteousness and with the expectation. And so to clear that energy is you just take a deep breath in, and you imagine yourself breathing in oxygen or white light, and then you send that out, because everybody's meant to be a gift in that way. Everyone's meant to be a gift in some way, shape, or form. I've got exes that are all gifts to me now. At the time, they definitely weren't. But when we start to send energy out, and really, that's how we truly can take action. Acceptance in mind is one thing. Acceptance in heart is another. And the number one acceptance you can do when you accept somebody in heart or in spirit is breathe in white light, send it to them, and you can say, I accept you, or you can just say, I love you, and just let them be who they are. And that's on any level of closeness to you. But then the farther out they are, you might want to make I probably won't hang out with that person again. And that's okay, because you don't owe them anything. By the way, they don't owe you anything either. And so when you can control that, you start to reshape your environment by creating the ideals that you want. Does that make sense, Leah?
Yeah, no, it's both very, very good perspectives. And I think that I think that we're given an opportunity to kind of reshape how we interact and accept other people. And so I appreciate that kind of tactical, actual, this is what you can do when we're all in different places, like a ping pong ball right now. And even though we all come together, we can be in different places and still respect and honor that. So I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Cool. Anyone else? I see it. Sometimes people have been making some comments on.
Hi,
Zoe.
Izzy.
Just really quick echo to that. I love all that stuff. One of the things, just to quickly touch on what we just were talking about, is when you're in that positive space, trying to, and like in Chris's meditation, put a protective bubble around yourself, because we do feel all of the energy of what's going around, especially if it's somebody that you love. And we absorb that energy. So if you can just put a protective bubble, or try to outwardly imagine that protective, positive bubble around you, so that you can kind of radiate that for yourself and others. That's what I try to do. And sometimes when I feel like my energy has shrunk, I get scared and feel vulnerable in that space, because I always feel like my energy is out very big. So when your energy is more vulnerable, just be good to yourself and kind, and then move through it really fucking fast. Sorry, this is recorded. I shouldn't have said a cuss word. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
Sweet.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to just use the facilities real quick. I'm not used to these.
Hey, Al.
Yeah.
Zoe just talked about
I did hear it. I could hear it.
Okay, perfect.
The only thing I would say to that is there's different stages of energetic construct. Protective bubble is a great stage, because you kind of put this space around you, and the only thing in your bubble is positive energy, positive mind, positive beingness. And for some people, that's the best they can do. In our stages of life, as we're growing, as we're getting more connected, more powerful, there's certain levels to that. I would say the ultimate level, and by the way, that's a great level. The ultimate level would be to be kind of like the garden hose, where you channel energy through you at such a profound level that nothing can get in. Not because you've put the barrier or the bubble, but because you're just flowing so much positive energy out. And it can't be your own beingness, because if you give your energy, you create a void. And so when you exchange your energy out, you create a vacuum or void, and you'll take on somebody else's energy. And this could be if you're trying to share with somebody who's struggling, and you give them yourself, then in turn you'll take their energy on. And this is how people can go away from situations and feel drained, or end up even feeling sick, or whatever else it is. We want to make sure that you don't give yourself, you just give a bigger energy that flows through you. And there's mechanics to that, and that's a conversation for another day. But if you can just think pulling energy from this bigger plug that we're all plugged into, and then sharing that breath out, instead of just thinking from the front of the mind and giving from our physical being. So the bubble's a great step. If you're doing nothing else, make a bubble. And
Yeah,
then, yeah, go ahead, Tom.
I'm going to take it one farther step and go a little bit more woo woo with this just a little bit. So I agree with Al. Like the bubble's a great step, and it's a perfect place to be. Depending on an individual's path or trajectory, what probably evolves at some point is when you enter states of complete acceptance of people and circumstances, then you find usually less need to protect. A bubble, is extraordinarily effective protection. It's rooted within a survival construct, which is that I need to protect myself. And sometimes it's to be the most effective. That may be the smartest thing to do. Eventually, however, there is another path that eventually, may transcend after a bubble stage, and there's crazier talks for different times down the road, but just know it's a continuum, and that's really freaking amazing. It's great advice.
Yeah, it's probably a good time. You add some woo in anyway, so it's all good. Any other questions? Any other things? We really appreciate it. We'd love to share any more. Love hearing even just the comments and the awarenesses and the nuggets.
I've got some more woo-woo for you.
Yes.
Allie, you keep coming back to talking about how you always, or I myself, we always figure it out, or you always find a way. I take it away from myself, and I say, like, the universe always has my back. Like, no matter what, it will always work out, whether it's how you picture it in your mind or not. It always seems to find a way to lay itself out and just kind of pave the way. That might be kind of like a naive way to look at it, but that's how I look at it anyways. But that's why I brought out The Alchemist is like my favorite book ever. And I was like, this is the best time to read that and just kind of rediscover how to find your own path and how to let kind of the universe, I don't know, take away.
Yeah, no, that's a great construct of mind. There is a co-creation that's happening with the universe. The universe will always push you into evolution, for sure. That's for sure, and it'll always support you, even through what us humans would term as pain and struggle. We're the universe is supporting us in our evolution, and the universe is always going to be for us. The only difference between the universe supporting us through pain and struggle and joy and abundance is how we're meeting the universe halfway. And when we realize that we can co-conspire with the universe, and then the universe no longer has to donk us over the head with pain and struggle, and then we start actively taking what the universe is always there for us, and then actively choosing to interact with the universe through joy and abundance, everything we learn then can be through joy and abundance versus pain and struggle. 100% the universe is always there for us. The universe always shows us and finds a way, for sure. If we co-create with the universe, then we get to decide whether that's through pain and struggle or joy and abundance. And when we co-create through joy and abundance, man, I spent 30 years of my life not knowing that was a choice. And so I only thought, it's the struggle that builds character, and pain allows us to, and I'm just going to completely give it up to God or to the universe, and whatever they give me, whatever he gives me, that's I can handle it. And so bring it on. I was this weird, but I was a battler and a fighter and all these other things. So that was the mindset. On some level, I think we all do that. But once I realized I could co-create, and yes, the universe has been here for me the whole time, but now I get to negotiate the terms of the agreement. I changed that, and it was joy and abundance all the way. Does that make sense? Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Anyone else? Dave, I see you on the call. It's great to see your beautiful face. You are in Seattle?
Indeed, yes.
How's the vibe over there?
Vibe is a little strange. I feel like it's part of my duty to step out and bring some smiles and some light into the world, where we should be a little bit more banded together, but people are, as you walk down the street, I'm finding that there's this avoidance of eye contact that's happening, and the physical separation because we have to. But I think that we need to close that gap a little bit by not being so protective of our emotional state and allowing more of each other's presence to be accepted. And I think that's where that's the struggle that we're going through at the current moment in time. Is there's so much fear around the just picking up the virus, and everyone's acting like everybody else has it, which is a good thing. But at the same time, we need to just lead with positivity and allow everybody else's light into our own. And I'm trying to do that as I do my little neighborhood walks and bring my joy into the world. And there's no toilet paper.
Yeah, that's a great construct. How good is everyone doing at receiving love, receiving happiness, receiving joy? Are they making any room for that? Because it sounds like, especially in certain areas of the country, and I know Seattle's kind of the intensity of that area. Are people doing a good job at receiving right now, receiving positivity, receiving love? Do they have any room for it? Or is it just the fear that's consuming you?
Dave disappeared.
Say that again?
Is Dave still here?
Dave's still there. I was asking a collective question to the group.
Oh.
Hey, Al, it's Trev. Hey, I think, from my experience up here in outer space, at least, from my experience, we've been sensing a lot from our clients and from our friends and family and whatever, that people do need to receive that love. And so to the extent that we as, actual or, perceived influencers within our own little spheres can do it, I think delivering as much love as we can in little simple ways too, is really empowering to people out there in a time where all the news is negative. It doesn't matter where you're getting your news from, it's all negative. And so in a time where that's a situation, we've found that little pops of gratitude, little pops of love, little deliveries, whether it's a text message or we've been riding bikes with our kids and we're dropping our new koozies and mailboxes, and like we've been getting texts and whatever from people. Yeah, sidewalk chalk, doing stuff. People just like respond so well to the positivity right now. So, I think it's almost like springtime, right? It's like the more positivity we can sprinkle, the more little green sprouts we're going to see, and the more we're going to all collectively lift our heads up. So these types of calls, these types of interjections, you guys, your wisdom, Tom's wisdom, certainly is helping us. But I think, spreading that and not being afraid, to Leah's point, like, if you speak positively right now to the wrong person, like they look at you like you have two heads. They really do. It's like, oh my God, it's doom and gloom in the world. And you think there's sprouts of green out there? What are you smoking? Nothing, because the dispensaries are out. That's the answer fairly everywhere. But anyways, to me, it's little pops of positivity are going a long way. So I love the idea of making eye contact. The gentleman that spoke before, like I'm noticing that in public. I'm noticing that where we go out, it's like everyone's looking at you like you are the coronavirus. And so even if we can spread a little bit of joy digitally, little touches, little things. I went through my contacts the other day and literally just started firing out texts. Hey, how's it going? How you feeling? You guys hanging in there? And I probably sent 25 of them. And it was great. People responded really, really well.
Between Dave and Trev and just this concept of, one, it is definitely sharing, making sure you're sharing. Dave, not being tied to how people respond or how people receive it. that's where that faucet just continues to flow. One thing, I know you're a highly interactive person, a highly social person, and one of the biggest huggers I know. And so like that physical interaction, that kind of confirmation back is a big thing for you. And that should be a little gift in this time to realize it's not about the responses, it's about how you're sharing. Trev just dropping off koozies, not about how receiving text back or not, just it's the constant flow of bigger love, not just your love, but this bigger love without any kind of outcome. That's the most amazing form of unconditional love there is. Sending that energy, but also it's not just eye contact, it's your love, it's your energy with that, and getting woo-woo, it's channeling the white light, channeling the universe, channeling this thing that we all know that the universe is there and it's got us. We'll pull it in. If it's there, let's get it. Pull it in and send it out, and send it out through us. And people get it, they don't get it, they see us as the plague, they don't, it doesn't matter to me anymore. But I've been dealing with this even before that. I felt like people looked at me like I was half crazy anyway. I walked down the street saying hi to everybody, and they're just like, and there was a time where I'd get frustrated. I'm like, oh, what's your problem? Like, but again, that's not unconditional love. Unconditional love is sharing freely, fully, and sharing more than just eye contact, but sharing an energetic experience. And then if we could all remind people it's time to receive love, not just give it, it's time to receive it. That's another big one that I feel is missed. So I'd love to see social media and hashtagging and some things starting right now. Remember to receive love from the universe, from ourselves, from the world around us. It's out there.
Yeah, and I think being conscious again and just making sure we're meeting and honoring people where they are and accepting them and what their reality is, is key for some people. Everybody on this call has a particular similar mindset. Not everybody kind of shares it, and that's okay. I want to dive back very quickly here. I know we're probably getting close to wrap, but to something that what Stacy was saying. It occurred to me that this entire process that we're going through is going to create. There's going to be a lot of creation that comes out of this phase of this economic cycle, whatever the virus is, however this winds up, there's going to be a considerable amount of creation that comes out of it. So Stace talks about it's, hey, I always feel like the universe is has got me, or it just shows up, or it's provided, whatever the question was. A context for creation that I find super, super helpful, is pretty foundational when I accepted it, was that it's less I'm here creating this thing over here. It's more like, and I'm intellectualizing this thing that I want to create that's outside of me. It's more like the creative process is actually coming through me. Like whatever it is that it's essentially the consciousness, the universe, God, what have you. If I am feeling an impulse to bring something into existence, it's because it's already inside me, and I'm essentially responsible, or it's an opportunity, however you want to phrase it, for essentially manifesting and bringing this thing into existence. So when you're thinking about the destruction that's going to occur in different areas, and you're thinking about what it is that you're looking to create out of this entire thing, think of it less like you're trying to create something outside of yourself, and think of it more like there's something inside you already, and it's more like I'm chiseling the rock to allow the David that's inside to express. That was something that was hugely helpful for me a couple of years ago when I took on that context, and it seems to be a very empowering one.
That's beautifully said. Yeah. Yeah, pretty cool. You are the creation. It is flowing through you. It's already inside of you. I love that, Tom. So cool. Anyone else?
Yeah, can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
This one came to me today, and I just want to share it. And I think that a lot of us are like very independent. I think that's why we do what we do. We like to be independent.
I think accepting help during this time is going to be huge too. And being okay asking for help and reaching out to others, and even outside of our own little circles, just like it's okay to turn to other people. We don't have to have all the answers ourselves.
Yeah, that's part of that receive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Great messaging. Yeah, this is going to be a beautiful time to watch how people can really come together. Receiving, you can't give until you receive. I mean, I know the construct out there in the human collective construct, and even in our own minds, has been told that give before you receive. Giving is the thing we're meant to do. But the reality is if you have an empty cup, you can want to give water to somebody all day long until you receive water first. You're not giving nothing. You're just not. And that's fundamental. You have to receive first before you can share. And if you do receiving really well, you can just receive what overflows through you. And there are going to be people out there who are overflowing, and there are going to be people out there who could use a little receiving. And so, yes, please realize that you don't have to figure this out on your own. And that independence thing, I used to be really guilty of that. So independent that I suffered. Cool. Well, everyone, thank you so much. I don't know all the semantics of sharing this. I did record the entire thing. I'm going to put it out. I'll probably put it on my website. If you haven't followed me on social media, Instagram's my biggest place, and it's at the.alfuentes. And so I'd love to get some more interaction. I love the people I get to interact with. So please, if you want to follow me, Tom, what Instagram, or not Instagram, what social media would you like people to find you on?
I don't know the social media so much. I just appreciate being with you guys here today. And
Stacey,
it's the Ross team at Bay Equity.
Ross team it's at Ross Team Bay Equity.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a great place. He leaves that to you, right?
Yes, he does.
But yeah, Tom, if these keep going, you're going to really have to get on board with this social media thing.
We'll see how it goes, man. I look forward to some more conversations. We got a lot of places we can dive.
Yes, there he is, Tom Ross.
He feeds me the content, and then I push it out to everyone. So it's still from his heart. Trust me.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much. Please reach out. I also recorded just the audio version. My email is al@alfuentes.com if you want to email me to get a copy of just the audio. I'll figure out how to, well, I know technically how to upload videos, so I'll get that figured out. I just don't know who was all on the call to be able to reach out to everyone. And maybe Zoom has a way to do that. But either way, thank you. Tom, thank you so much for hosting with me. You're brilliant and amazing, and I appreciate your wisdom.
Thanks, Al. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Everyone else, thanks for the participation, and we'll look to do more of these. Share all this stuff. It's important.
See you guys.
Thank you.